It's the Dynasty Ranks episode. Get your popcorn, get your notepad. What's the approach? What factors are in play? Who's elite and who sucks? It's the first off-season Dynasty Ranks show. Giddy up. Sights and sounds and edges found. You will now get down with the Underground, the Dynasty Underground, the show that goes to the depths of the Dynasty landscape. I am Trav, I host and I West Coast, and my fellow West Coast brethren with me tonight, Mr. Game Theory, the sage general out on the front lines, Jax Falcone. How are we doing tonight, Monsieur Boulanger?
Jack's on, Jack's off.
a Jack's on, a Jack's off. That is a new bit that we started in the group chat, and we might have some Jack's on and Jack's off moments on this episode, ladies and gentlemen. So after kicking off with such a bang, I would like to introduce the man who is always processing the process, Dino Joe Kuvatakis. What is the business, my friend?
I'm still trying to think of things that rhyme with Joe that I can do, but none of them are good.
That's because I'm the rapper on the show, Joe,
Yes.
so you can leave that to me. I'm kind of reeling off of that one that you started us with there, Jax. That was fantastic. I appreciate that. Yeah, a little bit that we have when Jax is dropping that wisdom, a little bit of Mr. Miyagi in them. We call it Jax on, Jax off. And I decided to throw a little Japanese flavor on it to make it authentic, and I love it.
Yeah,
I love
it's
it.
always
So
great
good.
when you explain the joke.
Yeah, no, totally. Go deeper into it. The other thing that happens is at the end of it, you say Jack's off, which is not really good, which is super hilarious. So yeah, it's pretty fun. It's pretty funny.
It's incredible. Yeah. And we didn't even talk about throwing that one out, but I kind of had a feeling that I would be throwing one out sometime in the show, and you just kicked it off with that. So no better way to start, fellas. You can find us, for anybody listening or watching, on the Undroppables YouTube channel or your favorite audio platforms. As always, our personal social medias can be found in the episode description, but make sure you are following the Undroppables on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, what have you. And tonight, like I said in the pre-open, gentlemen, we are talking Dynasty Ranks. We're talking Sheldon Rankins, if you will.
Yeah.
All three of our Dynasty Ranks guys are now live on the undroppables.com. So any listeners, if you want to see the whole gamut, please go there and check it out. And yeah, guys, we sort of aligned our most recent update for our Dynasty Rankings to make sure that we could kind of have some good content for this show. And boy, as we dialed in this show sheet, there is a lot to talk about, fellas. Personally, I've been tinkering with my rankings for the last couple of weeks since we decided we're going to do this. As recently as a few minutes before the show started, I was making some adjustments. Dynasty rankings are quite the exercise, fellas. And, I'd prefer not to admit how much time I spend waffling between the wide receiver 48 and the wide receiver 49, but that's just kind of part of the deal when you're doing this. Jax, I know you and I have been doing Dynasty Ranks for quite a few years now. Joe, this is your first year putting out some official public Dynasty Rankings. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how that process was for you and maybe any big takeaways that you have from the first run? Jax, I want you to dive right in off of what Joe's got to say.
Yeah, well, it's been, I started doing them, last summer or something, right? I would say this time of year, this is nothing super scientific yet because it's too hard to do without knowing all the coaches, all the quarterbacks, the way the teams look, to use projections as part like a tool. So right now it's literally just looking at guys and, at each position group and being like, all right, would I rather have this guy or this guy? Would I rather have this guy or this guy? And I just work my way down the list. So I'm looking at talent, contract length, and, I'm just asking myself who I'd rather have. But, once we hit free agency, once we hit the NFL draft, obviously there's a lot more we can incorporate it. But I don't know. Not to go too long here, but, it's been 4 days since I did my rankings, and I already see all of my biases seeping through just looking at it from 4 days ago. And I just can't describe how much I actually hate the process of rankings.
Yeah.
Right. I just think like making it a linear thing is so problematic on so many
Yes.
levels. It's almost like, in my mind, I think of them as clusters, right? And it's a bunch of if then statements to get into the next cluster, right? Each cluster is like a range of points per game that these guys can get to. And so, these clusters should be based on profiles. And that's how you should really think about this. So the linear thing is like a necessary evil. I get it, but I absolutely hate it, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, because really it's like tiers or clusters, as you point out. And yeah, there can be a difference between, wide receiver 8 and 9. That's a chasm. But the difference between wide receiver 8 and 7 is 0. They're the same. I value them identical. So yeah, that sort of doesn't show through rankings, but it is kind of an interesting exercise when you have to decide between who you'd rather have, Jonnu Smith or TJ Hawkinson or whatever, or Dalton Kincaid and TJ Hawkinson, and you're like, I don't know. Who do I prefer? Who do I think? So it really starts to get you thinking, and that's why what did I say pre-show, backstage? I said our rankings are wrong. It's just how are they wrong? That's all you really want to know, and so that's what the thought exercise does. I can remember literally me first getting into the fantasy space was me looking for a place to house my rankings. Like I was like, I want to do my own rankings. I don't really want the public to see it. I just want to have a place where I can like put them, because I'm not like Excel spreadsheet guy. I was like, be cool if there were like a customer facing place where you could do your own rankings. And that's when I met Alex Johnson, who had a site called Create a Rank. I found that, and now that's yards per. But yards per fantasy, Alex Johnson does good work. He's a good dude. But
Yeah.
long ago. And so, I think there's probably a desire for a lot of people to sort of rank them themselves, and dynasty gamers, because I know I felt that way. And but it's a hard job to actually keep them up. And that's why I tell people, there's always someone who wants to do rankings for the site, and I'm like, yeah, go right ahead. And then like a month later, they haven't touched them, and it's like, not so easy, is it? It's hard, and every new bit of information makes you change. And did I update where Tyrone Tracy is or whatever the hell, and off you go. So it's a labor, but it's a great
100%.
exercise.
I gotta give a shout out to our boy at Slashy.
Yeah.
He DM'd me like 2 weeks ago on Twitter, just like clowning me for not having updated my rankings. I think it was after another show that
Good.
Trav and I talked about how like
Get 'em.
we needed to do it, and I was like, God damn it, you're right. All right, I'll fix it soon, right? And I was like, in the next 48 hours, all right, give me a break. It took a week, but whatever. Here we are. Shout out Slashy.
And I told Trav, I said, you either do rankings or you don't have rankings. Do you know what I mean? You didn't have rankings. Those weren't rankings. Those were historical data points that had nothing to do with those were not rankings. If they're more than a month old, they're just not rankings. It's not fucking rankings. That's all. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah. So you got to keep up on it, or they just aren't rankings.
And that is why I'm excited for this exercise, fellas, because I think what's going to happen with the three of us now being on a regular weekly show is just a little bit of accountability, right? We're going to be talking about our takes a lot. We're going to be doing these regular check-ins on our dynasty ranks. And Jax, I can not speak for you because I know you have been much better at updating them than I have, but I think your ability to regularly update your rankings is going to help Joe and I remain accountable to making sure that ours are up to snuff as well. And this was a lot of fun for me, albeit agonizing as well. I mean, we're trying to weigh youth versus age, immediate production versus future upside of some of these younger guys. And Joe, you talked about some of the factors that come into play. So I think it's a very, very good exercise to do. And you see all those people chirping rankings online, and much to like what you were saying, give it a shot, see if you can keep them updated. For those people who give chirps to people who do rankings, take a chance to do it yourself and see how you like that, because it is not easy. And there was a lot of waffling, like I mentioned. But guys, I don't want to waste much more time. I want to get into it. We're going to kind of roll through positionally here on the undroppables.com. Our rankings are positional, so go check those out and feel free to start some conversation with us, of course, on the social media. But the most important position in football, guys, is the quarterback position. And I thought the way we would attack this one is just talk about some names. And I have to admit, guys, after a piece of news that we saw this week, and some of our conversation last week, I had to admit I was sipping a little bit of tea this week, fellas, as I was looking at the Ben Johnson hire in Chicago. Because if you'll recall last week, I was the sole Caleb Williams defender. I took him above Drake Maye in our redraft of the 2024 rookie class, saying that once he gets a new play caller, no matter who that is, it's going to be a better play caller than he had in 2023. Lo and behold, the Chicago Bears went out and they nabbed the best one on the market, the most sought after former Detroit Lions offensive coordinator, Ben Johnson. So I'm feeling pretty good about my Caleb Williams stance last week, guys. And as I moved that kind of redraft of rookies into a dynasty rankings setting, I found myself still having Caleb Williams as the quarterback 8. Judging by our conversation last week, I would say that's probably a little bit high versus where you guys are. But I kind of want to talk to you guys about the new hire of Ben Johnson, because I can't toot my own horn that much, because I was not predicting Ben Johnson to be the hire, but
You don't want to jacks off.
yeah, yeah, I had a little bit of a jacks off when I saw that. And as I sipped that tea, the pinky might have went up a little bit. So what do you guys think about the hire, and how did that maybe impact your stance on Caleb Williams?
Well, I'll say my rankings took place before the Ben Johnson hire. So immediately I hate my ranking and it's time to adjust it. Obviously, it's the best case scenario, I think, in terms of like coaching candidates out there for Caleb, and just it's like such a drastic change. So I'm going to have to adjust, but I couldn't help but think to myself, is this a sell high moment? Anyways, go ahead, Jax.
Yeah, no, I tend to probably agree with you more than Joe, actually, Travis, because I have Caleb. We're talking about tiers. There's God tier: Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jaden
Mm-hmm.
Daniels. I think that's the God tier. I mean, I tend to put Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow in that, even though they don't have the rushing upside. I think they're going to be, where are they going?
Mm-hmm.
Jalen Hurts is sort of for me, you could put him in there or not. I don't know if he's God tier, just because, the passing is so limited, and that could limit his career longevity. So therefore, he's just outside that God tier for me. And then, I look at like Drake Maye, CJ Stroud, Justin Herbert, Caleb Williams, probably Bo Nix even at this point, as sort of that next tier of guys that, like, you know, they're not finished products. They haven't, it's like Justin Herbert's been up and down as a fantasy player, and even I suppose as a real player, I guess in some ways, but like pretty dope player. CJ Stroud the same. And so I kind of have him in there still. And then, then there's a sort of a veteran group behind that include people like Baker Mayfield, Trevor Lawrence, Kyler Murray, Jared Goff, right? This type of thing, Dak Prescott. So I kind of group them in that way. So yeah, I still think Caleb's in whatever you would call that, maybe tier 2 or 3, depending on how you define the couple of tiers ahead of him. But yeah, I think you're right. I do think Joe has him too low. And yeah, dude, come on. I mean, Ben Johnson going there. I was thinking about it today. Ben Johnson, this is the way I look at it. If he can manage all the things that a head coach has to manage, he's a great play caller. The
Mm-hmm.
hard part, and we've seen it with guys like Josh McDaniels, who, by the way, did go to Drake Maye, which I think is great, especially because he's going to be just a play caller, just an offensive coordinator, Josh McDaniels, that is, and he's not going to be asked to do all the other stuff, and that's Mike Vrabel. So I think the way that they've got that set up is great. In Chicago, first year, first time head coach, Ben Johnson, the head coaching stuff is the stuff I worry about. The sort of running a gigantic multi-billion-dollar business is what Ben Johnson is going to have to do that he's never done before. Not call plays and orchestrate an offense, but how much is he going to be spread thin and not necessarily focusing on the development of Caleb Williams? That remains to be seen.
Yeah, well, I think it'll be interesting to watch, because we know that he was brought there for one reason, and it was the play calling and to nurture
Yes.
Caleb Williams. And so whether it's a success or not remains to be seen. And that's a great point, Jax. I was actually saying that to Joe. I think it was yesterday or the day before. Joe, we just met up for a quick call or something like that, and just talking about what's it going to look like, being that he has to run the whole kit and caboodle instead of just the offense. So hopefully he can focus a little bit, and hopefully as a first time head coach, he can have some people around him that can handle some of that stuff for him, or at least kind of report back to him a little bit. But yeah, it'll be a very interesting new era, because that looks like a nice little offense to jump into for a guy like Ben Johnson. So things are pointing up for me, I will say that.
Yeah, I think I gotta adjust already. I'm ready to do this live, frankly. Real quick, should we go through our top 6 or top 12 for the audience, and then we'll get
I'll
into
tell you
some more of
what.
these
I'll
guys?
tell you what, Joe. Well, I'll start us off with our first maybe argument. Travis, you update. I had to look to make sure you updated your ranks
I
recently
know
because
exactly who it is.
I mean, we have quarterback 7 and quarterback 5, and you have Drake Maye at quarterback 14.
Let's fucking go, boys. Let's get
It's
into it.
almost embarrassing. I mean, at this particular point, it's like
You guys
you
should be
put it out
embarrassed.
there. It's like these guys, everybody's like, oh, undroppables. They know what they're talking about. Then they see you with this ranking and they think, what the fuck is this guy? So, I mean, explain yourself, please.
All right, Patriots fans, settle the fuck down for a sec here. No, you're referring to the fact that you and Joe have Drake Mace in your top 7. You have him at 7. Joe's got him at 5, and I have him at quarterback 14. And I think you guys have jumped the shark a little bit, Fonzie, because I just don't think he's shown us quite enough. Now he has 4 weeks of top 12 quarterback play. That's great. He showed it with his legs. He showed that he can kind of prop up a little bit there as far as those bad weapons. But I think you guys are ignoring the fact that there is still a lot of negativity around the situation for Drake Maye. There are no skill position players to note other than Ramondre Stevenson, who doesn't help Drake Maye as much as what we want to help Drake Maye, and that is some top flight wide receivers. So obviously they are probably going to try and get wide receivers. We just don't know for certain that that is going to work. So I cannot, in my right mind, especially with such a volatile production profile that Drake Maye has, you can't deny that these rushing quarterbacks who have a lot of work to do to polish themselves as a passer, or a little bit of work at least, aren't always sure things, right? Look at Justin Fields. I definitely kept Justin Fields for far too long because of that upside that he could present. And I was left holding that bag. And so I'm just a little bit worried. I like Drake Maye. I want him to succeed. And I hope you guys are right. But just 1 year in, I'm not ready to necessarily anoint him that, because there's so many avenues for failure that I can still see versus some of these other guys.
All right, Jax, let me take this one because you're the Patriots homer. I'm not. I actually have Drake Maye higher. How dare you compare Maye to Justin Fields? He has shown more poise, more ability to throw off platform. He's shown so much more in the small sample that we've got than Justin Fields has ever shown us. So, let's pump the brakes there. Not as refined as we want. Yes, he's a rookie. Very refined for a rookie. The rushing part is like a bonus, right? That's the built-in floor. But he makes some money throws. So I don't know. I'm ready to anoint him. The biggest thing he's got going against him, opposite of Caleb Williams, is that Vrabel's his head coach. But I think bringing McDaniels in, to Jackson's earlier point, bodes pretty well for him and that offense. And also, no pass catcher to speak of. How dare you insult Hunter Henry like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing. Let me jump in there too. There are 6 quarterbacks in the history of the NFL who had above a 64% completion percentage and over 400 yards rushing in their rookie year. I know those are sort of arbitrary, but it is the rushing floor that also is pretty enticing, as well as the accuracy to, you mentioned, to nobody. So he was very accurate, and he had some other things that looked very good. But those 6 players are Jaden Daniels, ironically, Robert Griffin III, Bo Nix, Kyler Murray, Russell Wilson, and Drake Maye. I think he's done stuff. And by the way, he did that in much less games. I mean, if you look at yards per game too, plus his efficiency stats, he's on a very, very short list of players. Look, he did it with the absolute stone worst. Here's the thing. We may be grading on a curve. I'll give you some of that. Like, he wasn't prolific, but how was he going to be prolific? Who was going to be prolific? You could have put prime Brady on that team. He'd have been frustrated as all hell with everything that was around him. I thought he afforded himself very well. He escaped a lot of stuff with his legs. He was great on a yards per rush basis too. Like, he wasn't just running for his life. He was running with purpose. So yeah, man, dude. And here's the other thing too. People smarter than all 3 of us, scouts and people watching, are like, dude, this guy's fucking for real. And when you see enough people sort of saying that, that's when I start to get excited, because I saw those same things. And again, this is coming from the guy who was a full fade on Drake Maye pre-draft. I was wrong. I'm ready to admit it. And you just got to change. And Trav, don't be late to this party. Drake Maye is the truth.
No, I none of this is an indictment on Drake May, the player, guys. None of it. I think he's fantastic. And I think if I trusted the organization to build correctly around him, 100% I would. But like, this isn't that organization anymore for me. And so I'm not ready to say that they're going to make the right decisions around
Now
him.
he's really trying to get at me. You know what I mean? Come what
Yeah,
Eagles make
totally.
the NFC
it's really it's
Championship
the
all of a
region,
sudden.
it's the region, it's the city, it's the people really of New England that I don't like.
Yeah, namely one.
Yeah.
No, and like, so it's not that. It's just I think that it feels like your guys' ranking already accounts for the fact that he's ascended to where we think that he can go, and I think he can get there. And I might end
That's
up
fair.
being a little bit late to that party, but I think you guys are already accounting for that and the fact that these pieces are going to be put around him. And I can see all of those avenues that you guys can, but I think I am accounting for the downside
Yeah.
maybe more so than you guys, right? I think for me,
No
it might be a
question.
little bit you talk about that asymmetrical upside, right, Jax, where it could be the same downward as the same upward. And I think I maybe see it a little bit more asymmetrical, where you guys might have it a little bit heavier on the upward, if that
I
makes
just
I
sense.
I
think
just
about
see him
it.
as a Justin Herbert type prospect where once the cat was out of the bag after the rookie year, like the respect level of the entire NFL, not fantasy. I'm talking about the respect level of NFL heads. They're like, nope, that's a guy. That's a guy. It's sort of settled. Like if New England tried to trade him, like every team but like 3 would be like, yeah, we'll do it. You know, I mean, this is a real dude. Green Bay does not wish to have Jordan Love over Drake May. They would take Drake May. They won't say that, but they would do that in a New York minute. So, you know, that's a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. You know, Herbert, like if the Chargers called the Patriots and said, "Look, we'll give you Herbert for May," they would not take that trade. Now, maybe the Chargers wouldn't either, but I think they probably would.
Okay, so as
Yeah,
I'm looking,
real quick. I just got to make one point. Um, if you invest in the stock market at all or crypto or anything like that, right? And you look at charts and you do any sort of analysis of charts, there are your candles, right? And then there are the wicks, right? And the wicks tell you where the candle's going. I'm not saying that Drake May is the number 5 quarterback in fantasy right now, but I'm saying he wicked up to number 5 for sure at certain points this season, and that's the direction the candle's going. Since you're Canadian, let me put it a different way.
okay.
Skate to where the puck's going. All right, skate to
Yes,
where the puck's going.
there we go. Charts and graphs just dunking all over Canada right now.
Wow. Okay, so I might concede a little bit, but not to the level that you guys are. And I understand that the candle that you have burning for Drake May is a bonfire, but mine just will not get to that point. But as I look at my
A really
rankings,
long wick.
As he holds his hand like this.
I could see myself having him up at 10.
We're going to get you 6 to 12 on Drake May for sure. It's happening.
Yeah. Is it 6 or is it midnight? What do you want?
Woo! Let's go.
If it makes you feel better, I'm adjusting Caleb Williams as we speak.
Yeah,
Okay.
no.
All right. So while Jax puts his pants back on, I think we should talk about a couple of these vets, right? A couple of these
Yep.
vets. Patrick Mahomes, you mentioned Jackson. We don't need to spend too much time on him because I think we're all in like a similar boat. I could have seen a lot of analysts dropping him in their dynasty rankings a lot heavier. We all have him still in, I believe, our top 5 here as I just go to the undroppables.com. Fantastic website. You should definitely check it out. We all have Patrick Mahomes in our top 5. I'm the lowest at 5. You both have him at 4. And I think for me, and maybe if you guys just want to confirm whether I'm right or add a point or two here, but for me, what that is yeah, his season sucked and he could have these seasons from year to year, any season. But the upside that he could present is 50 plus touchdowns and 5,000 passing yards. And so that's something that I'm not ready to just ignore and bury in my rankings just yet. So that's where I'm sitting as far as why he's still there. But Jax,
he was awful, right? Oh, awful season. QB 11.
yeah,
So, you know, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about grading on a curve yet again. And with Patrick Mahomes, you grade on a curve that's an entirely different kind of curve. Like you expect him to be Superman every single time and to throw for 50 touchdowns and 5,000 yards. Otherwise, what's wrong with him? So yeah, he's clearly the best player in the NFL. Obviously, I don't think that's even a question. And you know, for those reasons, I just have to have him ahead of a guy like Jalen Hurts, even though Hurts has a higher sort of ceiling on a week-to-week, year-to-year basis, just in general, I guess. But, I just love the stability, especially when we're talking about super flex, having Mahomes and just set it and forget it. You just never, you know what I mean? There's certain set it and forget it's, and certainly Jaden Daniels has broken into that, of course, but like they're hard to find, because even CJ Stroud now, who we thought was that, he kind of wasn't that this year. It was a lot of dud games and disappointment, and whereas Mahomes, even in his downswing, is QB11.
Yeah.
So Joe, give a thought on Mahomes and then roll right into CJ Stroud and his shitty seasons. That's the next guy we were going to talk about anyway.
That's why I brought him up. Sure. I'm the best,
So, I mean, Chiefs are always in the top third of the league in pass rate over expected, right? So for a quarterback, you can kind of think about that like targets for a wide receiver, right? They're not going to change that anytime soon. Not to mention, the thing that's held him back, I'd say the last 2 seasons, not only is his, the absence of wide receivers, but also the defense has been so good that they just need to stick around. That's not sticky. It was sticky from last year to this year. I don't know if it's going to continue into next year and the defense is going to be that good. Plus, he'll hopefully have, Rashee back, plus Worthy, and whoever else they add to that room. We'll see. So I'm optimistic about Mahomes because we know that the upside is freaking, as high as it gets. In terms of CJ Stroud, my only note here is that the pendulum's going to swing back in his direction, right? He's another guy where we've seen the upside. I think we've gotten a full idea on the range here to go back to my stocks analysis, right? He's trading within this area, right? He started at the top, he wicked down to the bottom, and he's probably going to find himself somewhere in the middle. So regression to the mean is the bet here, and buying CJ Stroud is the play. So I'm pretty comfortable with, let's see, where did I have him? I believe I had him.
You have him at 9. Jax has him at 8.
Yeah.
And I have him at 6.
That's funny. I feel like I'm the biggest CJ Stroud supporter. You guys are both higher than me.
Yeah, I think for me, he's the best non-rushing quarterback. Like, that's why I have him there. He is, as far as like very close with Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow is right behind him in my rankings. They're very close, but I think CJ Stroud's youth, attachment to Nico Collins, and kind of the future that we could see from him from what we saw in his rookie year. I think I just take that couple years extra that you get out of CJ Stroud over Joe Burrow.
Well, I'll just say, Joe Burrow, I'm 99% sure that they did lead the league in pass rate over expected. Plus he's got, the 2 alphas. We'll see if he's still got 2 next year. But that's I think what puts Burrow above Stroud is the offensive philosophy, which doesn't seem like it's going to shift too much for either team, I would think. Go ahead, Jack.
That's a good point.
Joe Burrow has had, 3 top 7 finishes, at the quarterback position in fantasy. Stroud has finished at quarterback 11 and 17. So, you can't have Stroud ahead of Burrow, and, just because he hasn't ever done what, Burrow does on a yearly basis. I mean, really the only time he hasn't done it, he's been hurt. So on a, per game basis, Burrow has just been top 10, where Stroud's never been top 10. So it's not close. As a matter of fact, I think it's closer argument to say is, do you prefer Herbert over Stroud? Stroud is younger, but again, Herbert had that, QB2 overall season, scored a million points in his, second year in the league, following a top 10 finish, I believe. And then last 3 years, he's been, sort of a high end QB2. Guess who's that? That's CJ Stroud, so we've seen the ceiling from Herbert. We haven't actually seen that full ceiling from Stroud. Stroud was supposed to be doing that this year. He's supposed to go from quarterback 11 to quarterback 8 or something, and have that top 10 finish. I know his weapons got hurt, but, Stroud has to put something back together to climb up. I would ask, I mean, we have CJ Stroud and Justin Herbert very close. As a matter of fact, Joe, you have Herbert 1 spot ahead. I'm almost starting to see it more your way. Herbert or Stroud in Dynasty?
I'm still Stroud. I think for me, it's the Harbaugh factor is the main thing. He will always want to have a very run heavy scheme if he possibly can. And so I think that's kind of the deciding factor. But yeah, these guys are right there, but I'm not ready to put Herbert over Stroud for that factor.
Yeah, the reason I went Herbert over Stroud is because, one, he's got, more rushing ability, and he's shown us more with his legs than Stroud has. Not to mention Herbert, he's got Ladd McConkey, who we all absolutely love. And not much else, Quentin Johnston. Yeah, there's not Palmer. That's fine, but those aren't exciting pass game weapons. They help, and they've made the most of them. But Herbert still put up great numbers just on efficiency and a little bit of rushing this season. I think the arrow is pointing up, or at the very least, I think he's kind of found a home where he's at in this, 7 to 10 range. I can bet on, I would bet on consistency here.
I just moved Herbert ahead of Stroud. It's super close for me, but Drake Maye, Herbert, Stroud, Caleb, Nix. You know what I mean? That's an interesting spot, and that's how I have them. I don't know what you guys think. If there's anybody that you guys have breaking that party,
Same group for me. And because we are open to new information, I actually just swapped Joe Burrow above CJ Stroud. So not ready on Herbert yet, but I love the argument on the Burrow over Stroud, and I think that's where I should have been all along.
Yep.
Yeah. I moved Caleb up to number 10, just ahead of Bone Nix with the new information.
Close.
Yeah, it's close.
Fun,
Those two are close. I'm still not 100% sure there, but I've gotten closer to the range he should be, instead of me just being mad at him for sucking in his rookie year.
Yeah. Well, this is really fun too, because I think what this does is this kind of remedies some of that agony that we were seeing when we were doing these ranks, right? Because we're doing that in isolation. We're beating ourselves up over takes. We're agonizing over who should be 9, who should be 10, who should be 11. And so with the extra perception or perspective is the word I'm looking for coming in, I think it's nice for us to clear some of this stuff up and adjusting shit on the fly. And I think that's part of what we want to do here for any of our listeners too, is like, we want you to be open to adjusting to new information. And one of the things that we're going to do here is we're not always going to make the decision for you. We're going to lay it out for you to make a sound decision on your own. We plan to give you opinions, but we also want you to be empowered to make your own decisions, and changing things with new information is the number one factor in making sure that you are an agile dynasty player. So thanks for letting me get that one out, Phil. Yeah.
I kind of feel like we're forcing each other to capitulate here, but
okay, well, I was trying to sugarcoat it a little bit here, but yeah. Move Caleb Williams up, Joe.
You know what's funny, because I get to I like to think of it like I'm in a startup, and if I'm in a startup, and let's just say that the Josh Allen, Lamar, Jaden Daniels, Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Jalen Hurts, Drake Maye, CJ Stroud, and Justin Herbert are all off the board, right? And you're drafting your quarterback 1, which I'll just that leaves you guys like Caleb Williams, Bo Nix, Jordan Love, Goff, Trevor Lawrence, Kyler, Baker, Dak. Caleb, right? It's like, do I really feel comfortable pressing that button for Caleb? I got to say, part of me wants to pick Bo Nix. It's like, dude was so good. I mean, so it's very interesting there, because, I might even, think at that point, maybe I'll just fade the quarterback a little bit further and get 2 more sort of late quarterbacks, maybe a Dak and a Tua or something, and try to get positional advantage elsewhere. And that, I guess that's kind of the other thing about when we talk about these quote unquote rankings. It's like, you're right when you said clusters and tiers, because I may be ready to cluster or tier after Herbert and let Caleb kind of be this. I don't know, man. It's like there's questions about all these guys. Caleb, we don't know if he's going to be actually good, if he can fix the stuff that was broken, because he's got some big stuff that's broken, holding on to the ball, taking sacks, not reading it quick and letting it fly. Now, hopefully Ben Johnson can change that. Jordan Love with the inconsistencies and the turnovers. Bo Nix, man, oh man, he doesn't really have anything other than, pre-draft, evaluation. Maybe Bo Nix is the guy that should be moved up there. And I know Jay Wood right now is just pumping his fist because he loves Bo Nix.
What do we call that? We need a name for this phenomenon. Is it like the cross positional tier break, right? Once you get to this point in the draft, you're like, I don't know, I'm just going to go wide receiver, right? What
right, totally. That's what we used to say on the True North pod so what are you doing at running back? I'm just taking a wide receiver. That's what we used to say. Right. Fuck running back, take a wide receiver. Yeah. So that's kind of where you get to. And you have to know those points too, right? And a lot of it can come with looking at our rankings here and trying to find some of those tiers as well. But yeah, it's a fun thing as well. Some of it depends on roster, where you can't.
I just moved Bo Nix up, by the way.
Did you? Nice.
Yeah. It's so hard. But I think if I'm on the clock, I just give me Bo Nix. I love him. Anyway,
that's
sorry.
Fair. That's fair. Okay, boys, I'm going to move us on from the quarterback position because I think that was a good little wrap, and we could probably go, as deep as we wanted and talk quarterback all day. But I want to get into the wide receiver position, get into some of these sexy skill positions because these are the ones that we start more of. These are the ones that we need to have more of on our rosters. And these are the ones where we really want to attack those elites, right? Whereas at the quarterback position, you can maybe get by without having the elites. These are the positions that you want them, starting at the wide receiver position. And guys, we're going to look at our top 5 at the wide receiver position. And it's interesting. All three of us have very similar top 5s when we look at wide receivers. So as I look, we all have Jamar Chase as the wide receiver 1. We all have Justin Jefferson as the wide receiver 2. There's no arguments there. If you're going to argue with that, you can go somewhere else. All of us have Malik Neighbors at number 3 and CD Lamb at number 4. So the top 4, we are in lockstep, fellas. And I must say, we are all very smart. Jax, you and I both have Amon-Ra St. Brown at number 5. But Joe, I want you to kind of talk about why you have a guy who I think we would say that we still love in Nico Collins as your dynasty wide receiver 5.
How does Julio Jones 2.0 sound to you?
That's dope.
I mean, going into last season, the great mistake I made, one of the great mistakes I made, there were many, frankly, but one of the great mistakes I made was fading Nico for my boy Tank Dell and just thinking, I don't think the difference is that great. Tank Dell was outperforming him in points per game before he got hurt in his rookie year. I'm not sure, but I had him way too low. And Nico came out, proved he was the unquestioned alpha before Diggs or Dell got hurt, and was just completely dominant before that, pretty bad hamstring injury that caused him to go on IR for 4 weeks. When he came back, he was still dominant, helped them win a playoff game. I don't know. Everything about Nico Collins screams alpha. Sure, he was a year 3 breakout, but he was just phenomenal. And I'm probably relying too much on the build and the frame and all of that, but we like CJ Stroud. We just talked about him. And even in a down year for CJ Stroud, Nico Collins was performing as like a sure thing wide receiver 1. What's going to happen on a good year for Stroud?
Yeah, I don't hate it. I do think that, you've got to overlook Amon-Ra there. You got to overlook Puka. You're going to have to get through a number of players, Brian Thomas Jr. and Ladd McConkey, for me to get Nico Collins elevated. Nico's going to be 26 next year. That's fine. He's fine. But, Puka at 23 years old and just the target magnet and playmaker that he is, I mean, only his reckless style and injuries will stop Puka. But if you want to make that excuse, then at least Amon-Ra and Brian Thomas Jr., it's tough. But I think Nico's often overlooked. So, we all have him in the top 10, and so he's a winner there. But I've got some other bones to pick when we get there.
Oh, so do I. So do I. One of them is the guy that you just mentioned, but Joe, I will say I love that Nico Collins take because you mentioned that you might be too attached to the frame and the size, but I think he does some of the stuff that the smaller guys do as well by way of yards after the catch and making it happen that way. So he's not just a big, tall alpha. He can do a lot of other things that not a lot of guys his size can do. So I think he is that guy. I love that Julio Jones light take.
Yeah, and then, in terms of him versus Amon-Ra or Puka, right? My argument with Amon-Ra is something we touched on in a previous episode, which is how much better is he going to get offensively for the Lions? I tend to think it's going to get worse before it gets better again. And then with Puka, I can't get this thought out of my head, and maybe it's flawed, but does he succeed without a QB like Matthew Stafford?
Dude.
I think now that he's established himself, he would, and he does. But I think it took a Stafford level quarterback to elevate Puka to the entity that he is today. Whereas Nico Collins, like I said, is just prototype, going to dominate, even in a
I
run
mean,
first.
that's a flawed argument because what did
I
Nico
agree.
do with Davis Mills for 2 years? Nothing. I love Nico, but you can't say the bad quarterback thing.
Yeah, you know what? That's fair.
You're welcome.
That's pretty fair. That's been
That's
a
why I'm
little bit
here.
of my stance. Like,
That's why I'm
what if
here for
a
the people
long
who are watching. Going, just say don't don't let him get away with that shit. I'm not letting you get away with it.
I'm not moving Nico down. He's top 5.
That's fine. You
I
don't have
like
to.
it.
The
I like
the
it.
people are going to sort by Jax Falcone anyway and just fucking go that way.
If you want to jacks on, jacks off, then yeah.
I'm Jackson off. No.
So I love your stance on Nico, but I'm not there necessarily. But let's talk about that Puka thing, Jax, because I was seeing the same stance a little bit too about what happens when Stafford leaves. Obviously, talent always usually transcends, but one thing that I could potentially see happening in LA is maybe when that happens, Sean McVay potentially leaves as well, or like I don't necessarily see Sean McVay wanting to rebuild. You know what I mean? So I don't know what's going to happen with that organization on the whole over the next few years. So I think that's what it is for me. It's not just the Stafford factor, although I think that could be a factor depending on what happens there, especially if it's a new coach that does not have the offensive mind that Sean McVay has. I don't know if they can make whatever quarterback is there do as much as Stafford has done. And I don't know if they'll see and utilize Puka the same way that McVay does. I'm not expecting a shift because McVay is obviously still there. But I just see a little bit of organizational uncertainty coming on the horizon. And I think that makes me a little bit cautious.
We'll see.
All right. Yes,
I'm
we
not
will.
cautious on Puka. I mean, the only thing that look, Puka's been so good at earning targets and then playing dope when he gets them that the only thing that concerns me is his reckless play. I mean, not reckless, but he just plays so aggressively and he's always putting like his body in jeopardy, diving for the ball, like blocking, inviting contact, that whole thing. I worry about him holding up over the long term. So his 23-year-old age, maybe a little less of a feature of him than it would be for other players at that age. That's all I would say.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like the
Jax,
Rams rebuilt in a year too. Like it
Yeah.
seems like most of the teams in a pretty good place. You worry about, the Stafford successor, but it seems like they solved that problem really quickly and
They
made the
sure did,
playoffs
man.
on a rebuild
yeah,
year.
totally.
Yep,
Jax is going to
they sure
murder us
did.
for that one if it doesn't work out, Joe. Jax is going to kill us on that one when Puka blows up next year. Jax, you said you had some bones to pick, and is one of them the guy that I have at 6?
A little bit, although, yeah, probably. I mean, especially one of the bigger ones I have is probably where do I start? Maybe Ladd, at 18. But I
Let's
think
talk about him.
we can go with AJ Brown at 6. I mean, I don't think it's as big a deal. It's just for me, it's like age, because as long as AJ Brown is playing, he is a top 10 redraft player at the position. I think that's the other thing too. I sometimes will flip it and just be like, in redraft, where's this guy going next year? And then how old he is. One of the questions you asked on the show sheet was, how do I do rankings? Well, the way I look at it is, and this is why I'm adjusting them so often, because I look at it like current season, or and right now there is no current season. We're not in the season, but so right now though, I'm looking at 1 year. What does 2025 look like if we're playing redraft? That's one data point. Like, because ultimately at the end of the day, we look at youth and we look at projection and long term and what's the contract and all the rest. But really, what it turns into once the season starts, it's like a redraft league, right? You're just like, who's playing good and how do I get them on my team to score points so I can win the money? And so year one is a big part of it. I look at maybe a 3-year window and then just what I call long term. Like, is there any window for this player after 3 years? And if there is, then that's great. But like for AJ Brown, it's like, okay, yeah, 1 year's great. 3 years probably strong. Is there a window after that? Probably not. Like, I'm not looking at him as a longer than a 2 or 3 year player. Now, it's possible he plays for 5 or 6 more years, but what is he, 28? Whatever.
27.
So if he's 28, 29, like, yeah, okay, so 28 going into next year, right? So, it's just like, okay, where are we at with that, right? How much more can we get out of AJ Brown at some point? And then the quarterback issue, and yeah, it's not pure for him. He is dope, just like it was in Tennessee. He had some issues in Tennessee that were not his problem. It was, he was commanding a huge target share, but those targets were like 110 or 120 targets, right? So that was the problem in Tennessee. Now the problem in Philadelphia is similar, but
It could be
way,
the
way,
same
way better.
problem, yeah, like, with less
Yeah, way
efficiency from the passer, basically, and
right.
trust me, as an Eagles fan, I have some of those concerns, but, yeah, I think for me, no matter where AJ Brown is, he's still in the prime of his career, and I think,
Mhm.
obviously, the wide receiver shelf life is a little bit longer, so for me, when I'm
Yes.
weighing the age versus the guys who have a few years, I'm looking at, is the upside that we can see from that guy who might be a little bit more aging, does that upside supplement the potential ceiling
Longevity.
we can see
Right.
from the younger
Yeah.
guy plus that longevity, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And for AJ Brown, I just saw his ceiling potentially supplementing that longevity for me, when
Yeah. So
trying to attach to 4 years out versus attach to the next couple of years.
So real quick, so you got him at 6. I've got him at 11. Jax is at 14. For
Mhm.
me, I had absolutely no problem with your ranking because when you watch him play, you're like, yeah, that's a top 5, 6 wide receiver in the NFL, hands down. I mean, the skill, the size, the speed, all of it all checks out. I've got just no qualms with it. I chose other guys for various reasons, age, situation, passing game, etc. But I could not get him outside of my top 12 because that's basically saying he's not a wide receiver 1, which he clearly is. So I put him at 11 just as like a nod, like, I feel like you should be higher just based on your skill level. I don't love everything about the situation, but I'm going to give you the respect of being a wide receiver 1. That's really, I went through that thought process.
I like
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I actually had him further down and moved him up. So for
Hmm.
me, it's like, I did because, I think there's a lot of, look, there's the God tier. And then if you're the wide receiver 10 or the wide receiver 7 or the wide receiver 13 on a given year, you're probably within a point or two. It's not like that's
Yeah,
a big difference, a gigantic discrepancy. But there is a gigantic discrepancy on how many more years you can do it. And Brian Thomas Jr. is going to be doing this for a lot longer. Ladd McConkey,
fair.
lot longer. Marvin Harrison Jr. Look, if you could re-roll AJ Brown into Marvin Harrison Jr., I do that in a nanosecond. So for me, that's where I'm at. Both of you guys apparently would take AJ over Marvin Harrison Jr. That's just not how I would ever dynasty.
Fair.
Yeah, that's an
Fair.
interesting way to frame it. I'd have to give that one some serious thought. I don't know that that's the case, and maybe I should be looking at my rankings that way too, right? It's like, who would I rather have right now, and who would I rather have like for the entirety of what's left of their career?
I don't think
Um,
you can look that far though. Like, I don't think you
well,
can have a window of rest of career. That's just way too hard to attach to.
yeah, not
What?
only that, but there also is current season and next season premium, right? Which is
Mhm.
why
Yes.
you're like, hey, I'm trying to win now, and I need to see it from Marvin before I'm willing to give up AJ Brown for him, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, I
and I think
guess. I
that's
mean, I
where it
just
is for
think
me.
I think Marvin Harrison put up 900 yards and 8 touchdowns. Like in a rookie season, I mean, what do you expect for? You don't expect 1,000 yards next year? I mean, I think like for me, if I don't see 1,000 yards from Marvin Harrison Jr. next year, that's a huge failure. Like,
Well, let's
and
look at let's
so
look at what Chase Claypool did in his sophomore year.
that's a good one. You like that? You like that tweet?
You
That was
brat.
fun.
You
That's why I love
cheeky
Twitter
little
because I tweet that.
bastard. You're so
Yeah,
it's
I
so
tweet that and
funny.
people think I hate them. It's like,
They're
no, I
losing
hate
their
you
shit.
all. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
They're
my
losing
my
it.
thing with Marv is just you see some awesome stuff, right? Toe taps in the end zone. Um, the route running, I'd say, is maybe as good as advertised. Jax, you hit on this last week, right? Where it's exactly what we thought. They were going to place him at X and kind of just keep him there. Or
Yep.
Trav, it might have been you. I can't remember which one of you said it, right? But he's shown he's put some really good stuff on tape. But what we haven't seen is the consistency. I guess we've seen a blow up game, maybe two. I don't know. It's just I don't see elite athleticism,
Mm-mm.
and I don't see a guy that really fights for the ball when it's contested.
Mhm.
Maybe on an over the shoulder deal, but like when he's got to come back to it, I haven't really seen that yet. If that's fair, and granted, I need to rewatch a lot of this stuff, but I just don't recall that much of it. Whereas AJ Brown, I know he's fighting for that thing.
I mean, even JSN. Like JSN, I
Well,
have at 15. Like, I mean, JSN's
I
going to
got
be
him at
putting up.
12, baby.
Yeah.
I got
I
him at
mean,
12. Yeah, I
you could
think
make
he's
a reasonable
flying.
argument that, if we're in a startup, I am going to be leaning towards JSN over AJ Brown if they're both on the board. Here's the thing: they probably won't be. I guess I don't know. Maybe they will. I'd have to look at ADP, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. JSN's so young. He's going to be doing it for a long period of time. And he also has potential upside over the next 2 years. Like, even if you just look at 2 years, who's going to score more points, which is a very short-term sort of viewpoint, I guess. I would still think JSN is a coin flip to outproduce AJ Brown, even though AJ Brown, is a better wide receiver, but he's also 28, not 22 or whatever the case,
Yeah.
Yeah. JSN was actually one of the harder guys for me to rank because it feels like I should have him higher. I've got him at 19. Jax, you got him at 15. Trav, you got him at 12.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like he should be higher, but owning him this year was not a picnic, right? It was a roller coaster. Who was it? I don't know. Somebody I saw on Twitter, I think it was Scott Pianowski, called him Jackson Smith Enigma. And I can't get that out of my head because, like, for the first 6 games of the season, it's like, all right, he has a blow up game and then 4 points, right? So I don't know. He definitely came on later in the season. He definitely became more of a go-to, but I want to see more consistency. And it wasn't that fun owning him this year. It was, I guess, later in the season, but it took a while.
Yeah, that's a good point. But yeah, I just think the ascension is going to be real nice for JSN. So that's probably why I have him a little bit higher. Fellas, let's get into it. Jax, you were talking about it. I can tell that it's ruffled your feathers already. Joe, I'm sure it's ruffling your feathers as well. So I got the sword out. I got the shield out. I'm ready to battle a little bit about Ladd McConkey, guys. You guys both have him in your Dynasty top 10 for wide receivers. I have him as my Dynasty wide receiver 18. And that might seem a little bit egregious, but here's why. I talked a little bit about it, I think, when we talked last week about our 2024 rookie class redraft. But I just wonder about the ultimate ceiling for Ladd. Is he ever going to be a guy that can give us 1,600 yards and 16 touchdowns? I'm not necessarily sure that he is. I don't think that is built into his profile of wide receiver and the way that he produces necessarily. And so I think that he is going to have a perfect storm to have that type of season. And so if I'm ranking a guy in the top 10 of my dynasty wide receivers at either 8 or 9, as you guys have him, I need to know that that guy has wide receiver 1 overall in his range of outcomes for any given season. And I don't think that's the case necessarily for Ladd. Another point that I made as well is that I think if there are any other weapons coming into this offense, they'll be trying to replace Quentin Johnston, obviously, and not replacing Ladd McConkey. And if I think if they do have a better version of Quentin Johnston in there, I think a lot of those lucrative opportunities, which is downfield and maybe red zone work, if it's kind of a more alpha profile wide receiver, could be to the detriment of Ladd if they continue trying to build in this offense. Like, I don't know if they're going to be done at the wide receivers position. I don't know if they're kind of locked in with Quentin Johnston as the wide receiver 2 there. I know earlier in the season, and he's nothing to write home about, they brought in DJ Chark to try and be that deep guy. So I don't think they're necessarily committed to Quentin Johnston. So for me, it's organizational building. And the piece that I could see them bringing in is another strong wide receiver who can do some of that downfield deep threat stuff. So that's
Well,
my concern about Ladd.
He'd have to take a step back in order to not be a wide receiver 1 next year. And so even if you're drafting redraft, I think he goes higher than you have him. And not to pick nits here, but you have him behind Brandon Ayuk. Brandon Ayuk's never finished as a wide receiver 1 in his 6 seasons as a pro. How the hell is he anywhere even close to this is ridiculous. So get him out of there. You guys are also a little high on Terry McLaurin, who I love. I thought I was going to be the highest on Terry McLaurin, but to have Terry McLaurin, there's 0.0 people that you could sell Terry McLaurin and get anybody to even have a conversation with you about Ladd.
Is it
there's not a
always about
single,
selling though? What about the value of that guy producing on your dynasty roster and
he
bringing you a
outproduces them.
dynasty title?
He's going to outproduce him. He's going to
Over the next
next
couple
year.
of years, I could see
Yes,
Terry
Ladd
McLaurin
McConkey is going to go.
outproducing Ladd McConkey.
Ladd McConkey is going to go ahead of Terry McLaurin in
That's
redraft by
fine,
2
but
rounds.
what about production? Like ADP doesn't
Redraft.
matter to me so much here. It's the production, right? Like the ADP is not Terry McLaurin was drafted way behind how he produced this year, but he still produced like a fucking animal. And I think with Jaden Daniels, I think his ceiling over the next 3 years is absolutely higher than Ladd McConkey, especially in the touchdown category. I think Terry McLaurin can definitely score more touchdowns than Ladd McConkey in the next few seasons, let alone the yardage, the deep balls, and all of that. So I don't know, Jack. I think you guys are a little.
Terry McLaurin.
I know.
I love Terry McLaurin, but
I like Ladd too.
this is okay. So then, if it's what the odds that Terry McLaurin outscores Ladd McConkey is what next year, just in 2025?
At least 50-50, if not in favor of Terry. No.
Great, 50-50. One's 30 and one's 21.
So
like, there's no way.
Whoa! Terry's 28. Terry's 28. Relax.
Sorry, you're welcome.
Some of us are trying to win now too, right? Like, I think Terry is a fantastic piece if you're trying to win dynasty championships. Like, I'm not always looking 4 years out.
I think he's a fantastic win now piece too.
We don't have to put Terry McLaurin down to elevate Ladd McConkey, guys. First of all,
I'm not putting anyone down. Except for Jack.
I'm putting everybody down. Everybody down.
Apparently.
That's what I'm here for.
You came in fucking hot today, Jackson. I am sweating.
The people love it.
I wouldn't have it any other way, brother.
I mean, so wide receivers, what do we look at, right? We talk about this all the time, but we care about yards per route run, particularly as a rookie. We care about targets per route run, first read targets, missed tackles forced,
I know, Ladd's right? Great in all of those. I understand that.
Yes, he is. And I think what's happening is you're falling for the trap that so many other people have fallen for, whereas you're looking at him like, oh, if another wide receiver comes in, he's not going to be the wide receiver one. Why isn't he going to be the wide receiver one? In college, the only reason he wasn't is because he was literally playing with the best rookie tight end we've ever seen. There's no reason Ladd can't be a wide receiver one with whoever else they bring onto that team. Like, he profiles as this slot flanker, sure, but guess who else does? Cooper Kupp, who was the wide receiver one in fantasy, 2 seasons ago, and put together one of the best seasons we've ever seen from the wide receiver position.
Do you see that?
Why can't Ladd do that? Yeah, exactly.
Do you see that coming out of a Jim Harbaugh offense, thoh, versus a Sean McVay offense? Like, do you see that?
Yeah, because Jim, all the fucking Harbaughs, every Harbaugh in the world,
khaki guy,
doesn't get to decide what kind of game script they're going to be dealt with. You can say, we want to run every play, and then all of a sudden you're down 14. You're like, I guess we're passing every single time. And so at the end of the day, game script changed on them this year, where they weren't able to run the football, and they had to leave it in Herbert's hands. And that's how Ladd McConkey finished as a wide receiver one in his rookie season. This is a premium asset, and to sleep on Ladd is crazy. But that's just the way it is. The other guy, what about Rashee Rice, you guys? Rashee is another one that I think, what's the concern with Rashee?
Yeah, you guys are last time I checked, you were both way too fucking high. You guys both have him at 13. I have him at 25. Like, you guys think, have we seen a wide receiver one come out of Kansas City? No. Like,
he was a wide receiver one last year
as a slot guy. Yeah, but over a full season, didn't have one actually. And that was a limited sample. I think it's why and guys, you have to understand, I am a truther of Rashee Rice. I got him on all those 4th round teams. He was awesome for me in his rookie year, but I think this is a little bit too much for a guy who we haven't seen for most of the second half of this season, who also had a 1st round wide receiver who looked great over the back half of the season come into that offense, and on a team where we always dive into these wide receivers being a wide receiver one since Tyreek Hill left, and we always get burnt off of these guys. So I'm with you guys, and I think that offense is going to shift into a Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy offense, but I don't think it's to the level of wide receiver 13 in Dynasty for me just yet. And if I look at some of the guys that you guys have behind Rashee Rice, let's just say, AJ Brown behind Rashee Rice, Jax, that is bananas to me. And so, Joe, if we take a look for some of yours, and I'm not trying to shit on you guys, this is just fun
debate.
For it.
Yeah, no.
I like it. I like it.
Higgins, Marvin Harrison, Joe, behind Rashee Rice.
Yeah,
Terry McLaurin,
definitely.
Jackson Smith, and you guys both have Jackson Smith and Jigba behind Rashee Rice, and
So I will tell you that I actually
Roma
like this.
Dunze behind Rashee Rice for both of
I
you.
like this line of thinking, although you do have Cooper Cup ahead of Rashee Rice. Must be a typo, but you
I
can
do.
fix that. You can fix that without a
In
problem. But
any
listen,
of the
you're
next
probably right.
years.
You're right about Rashee. In so far as like we've only seen it in spurts, and I was a little bit of a Rashee fader out of college, and so now I'm thinking that maybe my counter to being a fade of Rashee has gone too far, and I'll probably move him down probably behind AJ Brown and Jackson Smith and Jigba. I think that's probably the right spot. Maybe even T Higgins. He's certainly in the T Higgins, Devontae Smith, Roma Dunze, area. I think so. I think you're right. I'll move him, and I'm moving him right now. Good job.
Thanks, boys. This is really fun.
You're welcome.
It might seem that I'm getting hot and bothered, but I think this is just great content. So I hope the listeners are enjoying as well.
I'm just trying to think about who I have behind Rashee that I'd rather have than Rashee, if I'm being honest. Hold on, let me pull up mine.
I'm looking at him. T. Higgins, DJ Moore, Marvin Harrison Jr., Jackson Smith and Jigba, Rome. And then okay. And then it's all right. Yeah. And then we're looking okay.
Yeah. It's 15.
Yeah.
15 is the right spot.
In that area, yeah.
I feel pretty good about Rashee at 13. I'm good.
Yeah.
Wow, that's still high for me. Like I'd see, oof. Anyway.
Let me see where T. Higgins lands. Let me just get over Marvin Harrison a little bit. We'll see. Let's revisit this in a few months.
Oh, we will. We'll be revisiting all off season.
The thing about Rashee is he has the opportunity to be like a 150 target player with Patrick Mahomes. That's what he has. He does have wide receiver like top 7 in 2025 type of upside. I suppose there's some target competition there with Xavier Worthy, a potential free agent or rookie, Travis Kelce. Who knows what's going to happen there? I mean, that's the thing, is that we weren't really sure if even Travis Kelce was going to be back after this season. We still don't know that. If they win the Super Bowl and he, dances off and goes and have some Swift kids with Tay, this whole thing, some little baby Kelce's, maybe that's the way they go. I mean, it could just be right off into the sunset, but he certainly doesn't have any more money to play for if he's really going to be with Taylor for the rest of his life. I mean, or even if they just get married and then he signs one contract, he's good. So the contract with Tay is a little bit stronger than the one with the Chiefs.
I'll just say Rashee this season on points per game outperformed Marvin Harrison Jr. Obviously, very limited sample size, right? 4 games or whatever. But he got hurt in one of those games too.
Yeah.
Outperformed Marvin Harrison Jr. Outperformed AJ Brown. Outperformed Jackson Smith and Jigba. Outperformed Garrett Wilson. Right? He is tied with Ladd McConkey. God damn, I'm good at this.
It's true. He was really good.
Yeah, so I don't know. Yeah, he's coming back from injury. I think he's young enough. He'll be okay. We can project that probably by midseason next year, he'll probably look like his old self. And that was a baller.
Yes.
Fair. No, that's fine. I still think you guys are batshit, but that's okay. I love you.
Remember, the first month of the season, the narrative was Rashee Rice league winner, right? Everybody who took Rashee Rice was in the money. Rashee Rice and Nico Collins were the 2 guys that you just killed everybody with.
And I thought
I drafted him in a couple of redrafts, and I thought I had fucking won the league too, because I was like, oh my God, I have Rashee. This is because where you got him too was so cheap. It did feel like he was a league winner because he came out that way for sure.
I know. I feel like such a hater on this episode because I just keep like going after guys who I actually love. Rashee was
honestly, I feel like I'm hating on you too. It's all good. We're all
no, this is good.
No,
we're all good.
I can take it.
There's a lot of hate in the air. It must be that's okay. It's okay. You gotta defend your takes.
You could cut it with a samurai sword, right, Jax?
People do like this stuff though. They don't want to hear like, "Oh, I agree, man, totally." Yeah, just
what?
Let's just jerk each other off, and
All right, I got a question though. I have a question, and sorry, Trav, I'm derailing.
That's okay, and then we're gonna move into running backs after that.
Who was the hardest wide receiver for you guys to rank?
My God. Oh my goodness, like a million of them. I got a couple. Like you mentioned, Ayuk, Jax. That was a really hard one for me because I think the upside is where I have him, but I think the downside is similar to what you described, right? Or it can't be ignored. But Jalen Waddle was really hard for me, guys. We don't need to spend a ton of time on him, but the potential for Tyreek Hill to be leaving, looks fantastic, but obviously the injury history and the inconsistency of Jalen Waddle is still there. And so for me, I have Jalen Waddle as my
Wait, let's take those one at a time. Let's start with Ayuk. So you had Ayuk at 15.
Okay.
I had him at 26. Excuse me, Jax had him at 26. I have him at 34. Anyways, all right, go on to Waddle. I agree. He was a really tough one.
Wow. I didn't know you guys were that.
Like what we saw from him this year before he got hurt was very, very bad. And
We've seen him
be elite.
Resume, you can't take it off.
We've seen him be elite though. Damn near elite towards the back half of the season before last. Like, it was pretty fucking close. And if we're calling Rashee,
it wasn't as good as Rashee Rice.
But if he was damn near elite and we can project him as the wide receiver 13, why can't we do that for Brandon Ayuk in an offense that's been better for wide receivers historically?
I don't know if I even agree with that statement.
No? Deebo Samuel's massive season. You think he's having that?
Yeah, Tyreek Hill had bigger seasons than Deebo.
Recently, though, like, what has a wide receiver in Kansas City done for us in the last 7 years or whenever?
Tyreek Hill.
Maybe like 4 years.
It's not that long.
4 years or something like that.
2 years.
But since the otherworldly talent of Tyreek Hill left Kansas City, what wide receiver have we actually wanted on our team there?
Rashee Rice the next year, right?
A little, okay, but he hasn't cemented himself as that, right? We haven't cemented
he cemented his knee into the ground is the only reason that he's not cemented in that.
Why can't another one? A similar tune for Ayuk.
I'll give you another one. Is Rome Odunze was tough for me to rank. I mean, you want to eventually move him up a little bit, but Joe, I see you have him at wide receiver 22. That's probably better than where we have him at 17, 18, but he's tough. The other one, and I know this is like Chris Olave. I mean, because it's injury, because it's the Tua situation. Chris Olave is like the Tua of wide receivers, where it's like, yeah, he's good, but what happens if this happens one more time? Is he out of football? And the quarterback situation, the whole thing, really, really sad situation with Chris Olave. I had no idea where to put him.
Yeah, he was hard.
I want no part.
Same here. Yeah, I got him at 22. You're at 21, and Joe's at 27 on him, which that's a guy that should be a top 12 wide receiver in Dynasty,
Well, not only that, but I thought I was higher on him than Jax was, but I ranked him like way lower. So that's always interesting too, right? It's like I'll sit here and defend Chris Olave. I've heard Jax like shit all over Chris Olave, and meanwhile he's higher on him than I am.
Totally.
So that's the funny thing about rankings too, right? This is
for sure.
After you get out of the top, let's say 16, 17 guys, right? These are all wide receiver 2s to wide receiver 3s or wide receiver 3s to wide receiver 4s. It's basically, Chris Harris calls it like, wide receiver 3 in the infinite sadness, which I think is really funny. It's like, they're all kind of same-ish, right? And so I don't know.
Yeah. And it's like Jack said, we're all fucking wrong.
Yeah, the hardest for me was Jaden Reed. I think I'm way higher than you guys were. I can't remember where I've got him exactly, but the booms are just so big that I can't ignore them.
You are.
Right. I got him at 25. Y'all have got him at 34 and 38. That's Trav and Scott, Jax, respectively. So I don't know. I kind of even at one point this season, I was like, is he like in the top 15, right?
Totally.
Early in the season, he had a couple.
I've thought that before
too.
Guilty
is charged.
Yeah.
That tells you how fickle this stuff is, though, right? In the course of a season, like in week 4, I was like, I think this guy's top 15. Now season's over. I'm like, all right, I got him at 25, and everyone else is lower than me on him.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm probably at a split the difference type of area with you, Joe. Like I want him to be at your rank of 25, but I'm the one who has him at 38, and I could see myself bumping him up and splitting that difference for sure.
I will just say one more.
This ought to be fun.
One more real quick. Just Jalen Coker. I think I have a problem. I've got him way higher than everybody else.
I don't even have him ranked yet. So just kind of a glimpse behind the fourth wall is the way I did a full reset this year. And so as of right now, I only have about 70, 74 receivers ranked. And so I plan to add to that. And so I actually don't even have Jalen Coker on mine just yet.
Yeah, you do. You had him at 57. Yeah.
Oh, shit. Look at me go. I'm better than I thought I was.
Yeah, I had him at 64. I'm sure I could bring him up.
Yeah.
I've got him at 38, which is probably a little overzealous. We touched on this last week.
Oh, baby.
I'm maybe a little high, you might say.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just a little bit, but I love the vigor in that one there. Okay, we got to talk about running backs here, guys. We're having a blast, but I want to keep us on track. So let's look at the top 5 running backs that we got, guys. And I think we have a little bit more differentiators than what we might have had in the wide receiver position. So let's kick it off at the top because, Jax, you and I are in agreement. Jahmyr Gibbs is the dynasty running back 1. Joe, you have Bijan as your dynasty running back 1. I mean, at this point, we're splitting hairs, and I don't think anybody's wrong in this situation. But do you have a couple of factors as to why you have Bijan Robinson over Jahmyr Gibbs?
Yeah, David Montgomery's not there. And when Penix came in, we saw Bijan kind of hit full bloom, where the running lanes opened up because there was fear of the deep throw. And so I think Penix is going to be the QB of the future.
Yeah.
And that's really going to make him a more effective runner and probably a more effective receiver too. So I just loved what I saw from him. Obviously, Gibbs lit the world on fire late in the season too. So we are splitting hairs, but it's a matter of workload and the trajectory.
Joe, mine was also my ranking. I had Bijan ahead of Gibbs for most of the season, and then toward the end of the season, once Monty got hurt, I moved Gibbs to 1 because, again, when you're doing active rankings at that point, Gibbs was number 1, and so it's probably just a little sort of residual of that. But I actually just now moved Bijan up. This is, doesn't really matter. It's 1, 2, and then I think the interesting thing is that really the running back 3 is Ashton Jeanty.
That's probably
Ooh.
right. That's probably right. In Dynasty, I don't think I can argue with you there. We're not
Like
ranking
1.01,
rookies yet, but
you're not trading Achan or Barkley or Brees Hall for the 101 successfully. Nobody's giving you the 101, and that's where
Yeah.
Genty's going to go. So value-wise, you're there. Now, if you disagree with that, then you hold the 101, you know what to do with it, folks.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
No,
I
I
thought
like it.
about
Yeah.
trading. I thought about offering Brees Hall to the 101 holder in one of my leagues, and I was like, he's not going to take that, and I'm not doing Brees Hall plus. So you're 100% right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the right take. But let's talk about guys that we do have on the board here because, guys, I have Saquon Barkley as my dynasty running back 3 right now until the arrival of one Ashton Jeanty. And I think for me, it's just kind of what we talked about. That short-term ceiling supplements some of the age behind him for me. You guys have a stance on that? Joe, I see you have Brees Hall as your running back 3, and Jax, you have Devon Achane as your running back 3. So, Joe, I'll kick it to you first, and then Jax, why don't you just kind of defend those hairs that we're splitting?
This is just a matter of personal preference. I can't get, Brees Hall, Achan, both incredibly explosive. Both didn't show it as much as we would have liked this year. They actually did it a little bit more with volume and less with their efficiency that we saw from their rookie years. Hall's situation is a little bit in flux, but Achan's is too, but it's kind of tilted in his favor where the offensive situation overall is worse, but his situation has improved. So I don't know. It's probably a talent evaluation, gun to my head. If I had to answer, I just think Hall is the 3rd most talented running back in the league. And that's why he's there until further notice. We get more information via free agency, coaching, the draft, etc.
I actually just moved Saquon to RB3. I totally agree with you, on this one, Trav. Here's the thing, with running backs, if you go the 1 year, 3 year thing, there's really zero running backs, almost zero that have an outlook past 3 years. I mean, even these young guys, even Jeanty, like who the hell even knows? Running backs are so fickle. They can be injured or replaced in all sorts of different manners. I mean, generally speaking, these young guys like Gibbs and Bijan and Jeanty, certainly you can see them for more than 3 years having success in the league, but you get my point. After that, actually, there isn't. Achan and Brees Hall, like Brees Hall felt a little scary during the season. People were talking about Braylon Allen taking his touches. That didn't really materialize, but it wasn't like, oh no, that would never happen. People were actually nervous about that. So I think that the production, look, Barkley's probably going to be the 1.01 or something like that in redraft next year. I think having him right there with those players, those 3, Jeanty, Gibbs, and Bijan. After that, you're right. I do want Barkley because he's got the highest probability to help you win money next year in Dynasty. I agree with you, Trev. He's RB3.
won a lot of people some cheddar, and hopefully he can win my birds a title this season. But I'm not going to let the fandom creep in too much. But
I will say him hitting himself in the head as he was running in that 50-yarder on
cool.
Sunday
was gangster.
It got me all excited.
Cool.
Talk about Jackson off, fellas. It was going down. It was going down over here,
dude. You almost blew it though. How about Sirianni's call?
I don't want to talk about it.
What do you mean you don't want to talk about it?
There was more than one.
Hold on. That was the dumbest thing ever. I'm literally watching the game, and you know what? It was 2nd and 7. I won't ever forget it because it's when, a lot of people say, well, hindsight, blah, blah, blah. I remember it was 2nd and 7, and I go, I don't think they can stop them. I said, I don't think they haven't been able to stop the run all game, and they're going to have to stop the run here on 3 plays or 2 or 3 plays. They might go for it on 4th and short because they got the tush push. I'm like, this is probably over, and they're just going to hand it to, and then they bootleg, and I'm like, what the
unbelievable. I could not believe
unbelievable. It was like the clearest thing. Like, you're like, this is the moment that every head coach dreams up when you can actually just call a run play. And it's like, it's like digging the knife into someone's chest and killing them. It's just like, there's nothing you can do, pal. It's saving Private Ryan. Yeah. Unbelievable.
And the safety, throwing the ball in it was fucked up. It was fucked up.
And then they get 3rd and 19. They have to give it up. And then, of course, Stafford's going to go down and score. I mean, just absolutely awful. They really, really had that game. So, yeah, Sirianni dodged a huge bullet. Huge bullet.
Roller coaster.
I just moved Saquon to 4, FYI.
There you go. Good job. It's the right move.
I like it. Okay, guys. So I am totally ready to be wrong on this one. I'm ready to be wrong on lots of these as I look at your guys' rankings, but I think I have Christian McCaffrey too high remaining as my dynasty running back 6. I just think if he can come back at health, there is similar ceiling to what we talked about with Saquon Barkley, but obviously Barkley doesn't have those injuries that Christian McCaffrey has had mounting the last couple of years. So I think I might need to bump him back a little bit.
It's super hard with McCaffrey. I had him as the wide receiver 1 heading out of last year, right after he basically could have won you your league in 2023, and then hoping and figuring he would play this year, of course, to no avail. But same type of story with Christian McCaffrey last year as Saquon Barkley this year. This year's Christian McCaffrey a little bit different, right? Because he's got the injuries. We have a lot more questions. And there's a lot of running backs that at least have similar, outlook in a redraft setting. So if we're drafting, Kyron Williams, Bucky Irving, these types of players are like, yeah, man, they probably would. Even James Cook. I mean, James Cook had fucking 15 touchdowns or something crazy this year. Just absolutely unbelievable. So these guys do have the touchdown upside, the receiving upside. They're at least in the same realm as CMC as a redraft or a 2025 bet. But they also have a little bit more youth and long-term projectability as well as resale value. Like if something happens to McCaffrey next year, you really can't sell him for anything in Dynasty, which also has to be figured in. Whereas if something happened to Bucky Irving where he had a high ankle sprain and was out 7 weeks, you could still be like, I'm going to have a chance to get off him again, where that won't happen probably with McCaffrey. You're really stuck with a dead spot on your roster at that point.
What do you think you can get for McCaffrey right now?
It's a great question.
Well, are you getting a first for him?
Yes, I think so. But I don't think it's like an early one.
No,
man, I don't know. That team needs a running back. Yeah, they'll probably do a late first for him, but not an early one. Not even a top 8. I don't
It'd have to be the right person too. I think it's very case by case as to like the candle that somebody might still have burning for Christian McCaffrey, right? Obviously, everybody. Obviously, yeah, exactly. Somebody might still have it as a bonfire, right? And so you got to kind of make sure you throw your kindling into that one.
Man, I sold him mid-season in my home league to my brother-in-law. Shout out Pete.
What up, Pete?
For a 25-second and a 26-first the week before he got hurt. Oh. And I feel like I'm robbing my nephews,
Oh my God.
You did the right thing.
Pete. Okay, boys. So yeah, the running back position is very fun. Couple of names that I have, and then I want to kind of give the floor to you because I've been kind of picking where we're going here. And I'll be honest with you guys, I've just been looking at the Undroppables Dynasty rankings, going down the list and finding some spots where we have some variance. So couple guys I'll throw out here, and then I definitely want to leave the floor for any guys that you want to note. Interesting one for me, but I think we were all in the same boat, which I was happy to see, was Chase Brown. I'm not going to spend a bunch of time on him, but we all have him in the top 12. I think we all think he is going to maintain that bell cow role that we saw. It was one of the most bell cow roles that you can see. And so I think we can't ignore that in the face of the fact that he didn't produce from the jump being a rookie, right? I think he's one of those guys, kind of like the Kyron mold, where he took a little bit of time to come out of the rubble that was the running back depth chart, and now he is shining. So, and he's Canadian, so we fucking love him.
Oh, I didn't
Because
know
you guys
that.
love Canadians now, right?
Yep, he is Canadian for sure.
He is, absolutely.
Confirmed. Yeah, I mean, Chase Brown was just, okay, so I've got the bone to pick is that you guys also have Tyrone Tracy a little too high, in my opinion. Tyrone Tracy is still a 4th round or later pick. I don't even know if he was a 5th round pick on a bad offense that's likely to invest at the running back position because they don't have any depth at the position. So anytime they're going to invest, even if you say depth, well, what does depth look like in this draft is likely a pick that's a better prospect than Tyrone Tracy was. On top of that, you can't even say Tyrone Tracy is a young player. He's 25 or some shit like that. So, he's lightly used, and I really love the way he played, but there's just way too much inherent downside in the potential outcomes for Tyrone Tracy for me to move him too far up. Look, if there's people that have Tyrone Tracy that high, I would be basically using Tyrone Tracy as trade bait, and I would trade off Tyrone Tracy and get into any other running back plus profit.
I'm always good with that. I mean, pragmatically, the way I like to have my rosters is like I have one elite guy, and then I've got like a Brian Robinson, right? And if I've got a guy that like Tracy that emerges, then I'm running with that guy, obviously. But then after the season ends, I'm probably looking to trade him to get a Brian Robinson plus a pick, right? Just somebody to fill the gap until my next rookie can emerge. So I got no beef with that.
Yeah.
But I like what I saw from Tracy.
Yeah.
So I'll ask it this way. Do you think Tyrone Tracy is a sure bet to play after next year?
Yes.
No.
I do. Yeah, I think he's
In
already solidified
2026?
himself. Yeah. Why unless there's a catastrophic injury, why wouldn't he play? He'll be 27 years old, sure. But
What do
he
you mean?
showed some elite
Because
stuff on film.
okay.
I have him
bold
at
take,
17. Yeah, I would agree with probably Jax more so, Joe. Just I have him at 17. Jax, you have him at 21. Joe, you have him at 13. I think for me, if he's moving anywhere, he's definitely moving down because I think anybody they bring in is going to take some form of work that he had. I don't think he was ever meant to be the every down or the full workload back there. He was meant to be kind of a change of pace guy, but by necessity through the Devin Singletary injury, he got that role and he ran with it. But I think those guys are scary to attach to because it takes one draft pick, takes one free agent signing to come in and usurp everything. So I think it's
Just to be
really
clear.
Yeah.
Just to be clear, are we saying Tyrone Tracy's out of the league in 2 years?
No.
No,
I'm
not
saying
nearly
not.
getting this kind of
What
workload.
was your question? I just want to
The
clarify.
question is, do you think that he's going to be a sure starter, basically? Because
excuse me.
Is Damian Pierce still a thing? No. Why? Because he doesn't play. He's in the league. Like, Damian Pierce is a guy, but he's no one. Even Rashad White, you look at this, every year this happens. James Robinson, this prototype, and I'm not, maybe he's better than those guys, maybe he's not. I don't really care. What I'm saying is everybody thought James Robinson was going to be this guy. And I said, watch out. Jacksonville's going to, make a move. They're going to do something. Why would they do that? James Robinson was awesome. I go, why would they do that? Because the NFL. That's why. Because you don't have to ask me. Like, this isn't me telling you James Robinson is or isn't good. This isn't me telling you that Tyrone Tracy is or isn't good. This is me telling you that the NFL exists. They're going to have draft picks. They don't have depth at the running back position, so they're going to fill it somehow or some way. If they take Quinshon Judkins in the middle of the second round, Tyrone Tracy is dead.
Yeah, I misunderstood your question. I thought you
This year.
said for whatever
Never mind
reason,
next
is
year,
he still going to be
2026.
playing? Is he still going to be playing in 2026?
Of
And
course
I
he'll
think
be
that's what
playing.
I think that's what he
I'm
said, but
talking
he
about, is he
that's
gonna
kind
be
of like
getting 200 carries? Like,
viable.
you know, is
got
he
it. Got
gonna
it. Got
be
it. Got it.
right?
Sure.
So if not, if you say, well, that's a questionable bet, then why is he that far much further down than Joe Mixon, who is definitely going to play next year, just as likely to play next year and start and be the lead back for his team as Tyrone Tracy, and probably just as likely to do that same thing in 2026 as Tyrone Tracy, or maybe more. And so for me, yeah, if I can trade Tyrone Tracy and get Joe Mixon plus from you guys, I mean, you guys have him way the hell ahead of Mixon. I would take that all day long, because at least I know Mixon is going to give me maybe more, maybe less than Tyrone Tracy. I really don't know, but I just got plus for my efforts. So for me, I think that's the type of thing I'm thinking about with Tyrone Tracy, is just a scare of what they could do if they bring in anybody in the second or third or even fourth round. You know, it could be a committee at best for Tracy potentially.
I don't disagree, but now we're doing a trade show versus a
Yep,
ranking show. I would take Tyrone Tracy over Joe Mixon. Not only that, but
I would
like
too.
he
But
did put some very sophisticated moves on tape for a guy that's only been playing running back for 2 damn years, right?
he's
Like
really
I,
good. I
I don't,
love him.
I've been really impressed with him. So I probably am too high on him. To be fair, I don't want to fight you too hard because 13 is a little hot for Tyrone Tracy. So I hate my 14 way worse though, and like I said, I'm just going I'm going down the list dude by dude and deciding which one I want more. And it's like we talked about last week, right? Flip a coin. When
Well,
it's in
and
the air, I want
the running
Tyrone
backs,
Tracy.
yeah, the running backs are so tough, Joe,
Yeah,
because
so hard.
you know, we don't know what's going to happen. You know, wide receivers are kind of easy because you can be like, okay, how do they earn targets? Because
Mhm.
they're going to be on the field. You know, the top 60 are going to play. You know what I mean? So anywhere in the
Yeah.
top 60, you know they're going to get on the field. And so then it comes down to how they earn targets. It's easy to sort of look at that and say, yeah, he's going to get targets because he's good and he's on the team, you know? Whereas, how do they earn carries? No such thing. You get awarded carries by being
Be
on the
healthy.
field.
Yeah.
Yes, and in the game. And so, you know, the play has to be called for you as a running back, where that's not true at wide receiver. So, look, you know, that's my point, is like Omari and Hampton gets drafted to the New York Giants early second round. What are we talking about? You know what I mean? There's just so many
Yeah.
backs that, you know, could just make him, oh, I guess he's a backup now. You know, it's like, whoops, you know, it just happens fast. And that's what
Yeah.
happened with even a guy like Travis Etienne.
Mhm.
You know, he did that to James Robinson. He's almost getting pushed out by Tank Bigsby. Some people saw that coming. A lot of people didn't this year because it didn't happen last year. I mean, you just never know with these running backs. You know, you thought ETN was a safe top 10 type of dynasty running back, and even him with a first
Yeah.
round draft capital gets kind of pushed aside a little bit. Running back is
Yeah.
hard that way.
I did have the hardest time ranking running backs because there's like so many aging vets that performed above expectations.
Mhm.
There's so many rookies that are performed, and there are so many viable incoming rookies. So, yes, my
Yes.
general take has always been sell non-elite guys whose perceived value is up right now, and then reload in this year's draft, right? And that
That
should
is the
always be
best
the play.
advice. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Totally. If a guy does way more than he was expected to, most situations you probably want to see what kind of price you can get for that guy.
100%.
Like James Robinson was a fantastic case study to bring up there because he was the ultimate 0 to 60.
Like
Okay, fellas,
I sold on Chase Brown, and I probably sold too light. We sold before the end of the season where he really took off. Mid season, you know, where right when Zach Moss got hurt and it was a rebuilding team, and I was like, oh, you know, Chase Brown's gonna be awesome, you know, and we sold. I think I got like 2 seconds, you know, which is light. But here's the thing, I'm you know, probably gonna get a couple of backs that are got as good a shot as being a, you know, it's even if it's light, it's still not crazy to sell on these backs. In other words, I probably should have gotten more as a seller, of course, and you get more now. But selling these backs, you know, 2 seconds, I'll have two running
yeah,
backs that got a shot, you know.
I don't think that's
Yeah.
bad process at all, right? And I think for similar reasons as to why Joe, you and I potentially faded Kyron Williams previously, right? As he was one of those, and these are obviously bad ones that blew up in our
Yeah.
faces, but
Yep.
um, both sides of the coin, right? Running back that wasn't expected to necessarily be the bell cow running back. And Chase Brown came in and just did it. And so selling off of that, there's nothing wrong with that, Jax. Yeah, sure, maybe it was a little bit light, but we just trust ourselves to be able to recoup off of those, right? And that's part of playing Dynasty is you have to trust your ability to be able to hit on some of these guys that are unheralded or find that gem in the 9th round of your draft or whatever it is, right? Trust yourself. And if you listen to
Are we
this,
going to tight end?
yeah, we are going to go at a tight end here.
Wow.
But yeah, what I was going to say is if you listen to this show and you soak up that information, you should be confident in trusting yourself.
Yep. Jack's on, Jack's off.
A Jack's off. I could have to get like a Miyagi graphic for this or something like that.
A Jack's
Maybe I'll
on?
just put I'll just have to put Miyagi's face over yours for the entire show as an overlay.
Yeah, that'll be a good idea.
Yeah, totally, absolutely. Yeah.
Everybody's nodding. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so tight end, guys. Also kind of a tough position to rank, right? Like there's just a bunch of shit bags that are in your top 15 and you're like, fuck, but they have to be there. I think the biggest, clearest observation is that there is a new king in town, and it cannot be debated. And Brock Bowers is absolutely the unanimous Dynasty tight end one. I'm not even going to ask the question to you guys because I might have to shut down this episode if you guys had otherwise. But yeah, Brock Bowers, clear Dynasty wide receiver one. He didn't only have the best rookie tight end season we've ever seen. He just had the best season that we have ever seen, I think, from a tight end. Obviously, some of those Gronk years with like the 17 touchdowns and the 1,700 yards definitely are in there. But I think for me, with what Brock Bowers did, with kind of the difference in play that he has versus what we were seeing from Gronk back then, I think it was phenomenal. And I think there is still maybe a little bit of meat left on the bone to see a little bit more ascension from Brock Bowers by way of touchdown upside, by way of maybe having not a pylon at quarterback. Sorry, Joe. But that's where I'm sitting on Brock Bowers. But for me, guys, I don't think he's in a tier of his own. And so I just want to post that question to you guys. Is Brock Bowers number one by himself, or is there a guy that could maybe challenge for that in your eyes?
So as a guy who watched Brock Bowers all season, I will say he is in a tier of his own for a number of reasons. One, the handoffs. Two, the contested catches and like mossing guys, jumping over them, winning in every single way possible on contested catches. And three, just getting wide the hell open against all kinds of different types of defenders, corners, safeties, linebackers, double teamed, etc., when they knew he was the number one weapon on the team. So it is Brock Bowers to me, but the teardrop is not nearly as big as you would think. I do think he's in his own tier, though.
I agree. Yeah, it's hard because I certainly won on the Trey McBride bet. Before last year, I was calling Trey McBride the number one tight end to buy. Certainly that was a huge W for me. And I think he's proven it. And he also performed at a high level without scoring touchdowns. So he has a lot of touchdown upside to get. I mean, they basically manufactured a touchdown for him just to like give him one. That's how bad it was. He was at 0. I mean, he had the most receptions in the league without a touchdown, at one point or whatever. Crazy. So he has touchdown upside too. I do think they're a clear 1-2 tier. If you're gonna argue that Bowers isn't in a tier all by himself, it's a 2-man tier, and it's him and Trey McBride. That's it. And then it kind of gets a little bit interesting. We both had Laporta at 3. You have Laporta at 4. I guess we can say that. I love your tight end 3, Trav. Just the homage to the best tight end in the league, the
George
actual
Kittle,
best
baby.
tight end in the league.
He's
Kittle. The best tight end in the league, obviously.
He makes it happen.
Real life, he has been for a while.
Yeah,
it's not even
I just want to touch real quick.
Yeah.
Back on that Trey McBride before we move off, because I do have him in the same tier as Brock Bowers. And I know we're kind of splitting hairs, but I think what your guys' sentiment is probably the consensus of like the Dynasty cognoscenti, right? Probably thinks it's only Brock Bowers. And so I do wonder if there's a sliver of buy opportunity for Trey McBride. Obviously, you're paying a premium for him, but I really think he could maybe be worth that premium, guys. I'm working on a little short form video for the True North YouTube channel. Would love if anybody goes to check that out. But of course, Undroppables is the main place where you can find most of my content. But talking about some regression areas, right? Some really finite stats that you can find where guys are going to shoot up in 2025. And that was Trey McBride's 2 touchdowns, because if we look at it, he had over 100 receptions. He had over 1,100 yards and only 2 touchdowns. And if we look at some of the tight ends in history, only, just let me see my notes here. I think only 9 times has it ever happened that a guy has had 1,000 receiving yards and less than 3 touchdowns at the tight end position. Kyle Pitts was one of those a few years ago, by the way. Yeah. And so I just really think that Trey McBride is going to be more of a touchdown scorer. And like tight ends don't put up 1,100 and something yards very often. Brock Bowers was 3rd in the NFL among all positions in receptions. Trey McBride was 4th, right behind him. So I think both of these guys are going to score some more touchdowns. And so I think they are a clear tier of their own. And some of those guys kind of pepper in after.
Yeah. And Brock Bowers doing it as a rookie, which is,
is unreal.
Incredible.
Yeah.
And the difference between them is like Trey McBride has ridiculous, just nasty ball skills as well. But I don't think he has that other athleticism that Brock does.
Right.
And that's the differentiator to me. Now you can argue he's got a much better quarterback situation, probably just an overall better team situation, offensive situation, and push him into the same tier. But like, who do I want? It's Brock.
Oh yeah, no, me too. I just think I was mainly trying to see if we might be able to find that sliver of buying opportunity, because I think Trey McBride could produce at that same clip. So very good. But yeah, Brock Bowers over. Guys,
it's like Kittle that year he outscores Kelsey. They're like, see, but before the 2 years before and the 2 years after, it's Kelsey, right? It's kind of in the same realm.
Agree.
Okay, guys, I didn't have much else for notes of the tight end position, so I'm just having a peek at the list. Okay, guys, I have Kyle Pitts still as the tight end 6 in Dynasty. Jax, you have him as 11. Joe, you have him as 14. I might get killed on this one, but I'm kind of ready to, because I was almost ready to put him lower, but I didn't feel like I could. And so why were you guys able to get him down and outside of that top 10 when I might not have been able to?
Because we were able to. That's really it. Like, there is a Pitts derangement syndrome that I thought you had healthcare up in Canada. Apparently not. But you can get a medicine for that. I believe there's a pill for Pitts
Kyle Pitts ointment
syndrome. Yeah. You rub it on. Yeah. Jackson on.
Definitely
Jackson
an ointment. Definitely an ointment. Yeah.
I have a prediction for Kyle Pitts. I think he's Njoku, which means he's going to break out in year 6. So all you got to do is hold on to your Pitts shares for one more season, and then it's wheels up. Here's my slogan. We're going to make this a thing. Pitts in 26. Let's go, baby.
Oh, yeah. You can start promoting that one, not me. Yeah.
The midterms. Yeah. Listen, the whole idea is that Pitts has just been, he's not a tight end, so yeah, you just got to get off it. It's really bad. Multiple quarterbacks, multiple offensive coordinators, the whole thing. It's just, it's
couple of injuries in there too. But
even when he's been quote unquote healthy, it hasn't worked. It's just not going to work.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't give up on athletic tight ends. I just wait.
Yeah.
It's like we had to do with Njoku. It's what we had to do with Jonnu. We just wait, and eventually he's going to pay off. But yes, all the Pitts bag holders cry themselves to sleep every night.
And here's the thing. Here's the thing, though. But Jonnu and Njoku are actually more athletic than Pitts. Pitts was like this sort of, long strider outside player that they're like mismatched. The problem is he's not good enough to play wide receiver, like out wide and like beat guys out there. Like he isn't as good as Nico Collins or whatever, right? Like he's not able to do that. And he's not strong enough at the point of contact to play the position of tight end in line. He can't do that. And he's not this sort of quick, fast guy. Like Jonnu is like, Jonnu's like an H-back, like,
He's a
Delaney
yak
Walker
demon.
style or whatever. Yeah, yak and everything. Pitts is a different kind of athlete than Jonnu is. And Njoku can play in line. He's a big motherfucker, dude.
Yeah.
He'll fuck you up. And so Njoku, that's the thing. And until Pitts changes something about the way that if he can line up in line and be a functional tight end where the defense cares that he's there. Right now they're like, yeah, we'll put a safety on him and blow his ass up. And so the safety can cover him, and they don't have to be like when Gronk played, you were like, oh my God, we have to put a linebacker, in there because he's too big and he's going to throw our linebacker into the second level. Our linebacker is not safe near Gronk. And then they'd be like, oh, we put a bigger linebacker. And then he just split out. And you'd be like, oh, this is over. Like the duality of what those types of players bring to the table is what's so like Trey McBride, right? Trey can still, he's not the blocker that Gronk was, but he's probably a, I don't know, C+, B- run blocker. He can do it. But then when he moves out, if he's got a mismatch, it's over. You know what I'm saying? And Bowers is like Jonnu Smith on every steroid there ever was. Like he's just like you say, he's the best athlete we've ever seen at the position.
Yeah. So what you're saying is he's the Johnny Wilson of Jonnu Smith.
Exactly. That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
That's a good one.
Yep.
That is a really good one.
Sad.
Yeah. Did you guys have a hard time ranking Dalton Kincaid too?
Yes.
He is a fucking
no
hard
joke,
one, man.
No joke. I want to turn my screen around to show you. My line was, is Dalton Kincaid Kyle Pitts?
Totally, man. And I have him one spot higher than Kyle Pitts at 5. It's because I love the pre-draft evaluation and I'm still holding out hope. And again, another caveat with all of this is that the tight end position is fucked. Like once you get past tight end 10, it's really just a crapshoot basically. And so I think like the ceiling in the athletic profile that these guys presented is what keeps me having them there. But man, Dalton Kincaid is very hard because he should be like, he could be number 1 in the target totem pole in Buffalo, but the fuck's happening?
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So that tight end craps. Where are you putting your chips after the tight end 10? Who's the guy? Hey, let's see after the tight end 15. Who's the guy you're putting your chips on?
Okay, well, I've got a guy at 11. Joe, you have him at 10. Jax, you have him at 21, and that would be Jake Turd Ferguson. So that's one of the guys that I see outside of my top 10 that I would love to have attached to Dak Prescott in that offense. We've seen him command a shitload of targets as the second target getter on Dallas. So that's why I got Jake Ferguson
you
in
just
there.
Bet the don't pass line, you douche. He's already been a top 10 tight end. You can't bet on that to emerge. You just bet in the don't pass line. Come on.
I was like Jax has him at 21, so Jax has some extreme disbelief in him, clearly.
Well, and here's the thing. Actually, when I rank tight ends, I'm actually looking at upside, especially late. What do I need the tight end 13 for? Right? Like, great. Thank you. I got a lukewarm glass of milk from Jake Ferguson. I really want the ceiling outcome. So that's where I'm looking at guys like, I don't know, Theo Johnson and, Jatavian Sanders ahead of him. Even I don't have Chigaquanko ahead of him, but it's like, Jake Ferguson, just a guy. He's Hunter Henry. I guess I'd rather have Hunter Henry than Jake Ferguson because at their cost. I have them back to back. Damn it. There they are. Whereas you guys have Jake Ferguson way ahead of Hunter Henry. Is it really, are they that different as a fantasy asset
serious?
going forward? Yeah, very serious.
Yeah, he's shown us to be like a target commander in Dallas. And I think he might have some spurts of tight end 1 games. And so I think that tight end 13 in our dynasty ranks becomes extra valuable when we don't have one of those top 5 guys. And so for me, I think one thing that you and I have talked about a bunch on shows, Jackson, we kind of talked about it with Pitts Pitts is kind of that athletic guy who might not be able to be an inline guy. I think Jake Ferguson could potentially be a little bit of both and be able to stay on the field to tune of being a perennial top 12 tight end option. So I just thought that was interesting because I know you value Tucker Kraft pretty high, like I do. And I see Jake Ferguson in somewhat of a similar mold in maybe a higher powered offense. And so I was very surprised to see that.
My observation has been this. Jake Ferguson stepped into the Dalton Schultz role and did a pretty damn good Dalton Schultz impression. I think actually even outperformed Dalton Schultz,
Better,
right?
yeah.
But when Jake Ferguson was out this year, I had absolutely no reservations about plugging in Luke Schoonmaker, who put up very Jake Fergusonian numbers. And so it's a situation thing, right? It's a Dak likes his tight end, and they've all got similar profiles. And I don't think any of these guys are like top 10 talents at the position, but it is a function of their offense and their quarterback. So it's like insert average athleticism tight end here, and Dak will find them, which is why, I don't know, having this conversation, I kind of want to push Ferguson down.
I just moved Noah Gray ahead of him.
Interesting. Wow.
I mean, seriously, because if Kelsey retires, Noah Gray has legit tight end one upside, unlike
That's
Jake
fair.
Ferguson.
I see that. Not hating on Noah Gray whatsoever.
The swing. I'm moving Dalton Schultz down too. He sucks. Move him down.
Yeah, he sucks this year, big time.
He's
I
terrible.
don't know, man.
Yeah. All right.
Isaiah is another guy who I could see jumping in there.
Yep.
I'm moving Kyle Pitts ahead of Jake Ferguson for sure. I'm dropping Ferguson down to 15. Kyle Pitts moved up to 14.
Yes. No, Ferguson's. Yeah, I don't even know what I want. I mean,
you know what? I'd rather have Theo Johnson.
Of course you would.
Really?
Of course you'd rather have Theo Johnson than Jake
I can't
Ferguson.
say that yet.
Dude, that's not even close.
Okay, so what's the difference between Jake Ferguson and Tucker Kraft, though, Jax? Like, what's the big difference between those guys?
Well, Tucker Kraft is way more athletic.
Tackle breaking ability for sure.
Yeah, he's way more
from like ability to produce within the situation that they're in right now. Like if Ferguson's is the Dallas starter for the next 3 years, he's a top 12 tight end.
Well, if he had never mind. Wait, you think that he's going to be a starter in 3 years?
Well, if he is a starter, if we say that he is the starter for Dallas for the next 2 or 3 years, he's going to be a top 12 tight end if he's healthy.
I don't know that to be true.
I would also question the premise that he's going to be the starter, or even in Dallas.
And even if he is the starter, I don't know that he's going to be
in
top
his second
10,
season,
top 12.
And he was a starter already in his rookie season.
He's 26.
This is exactly what we saw from Dalton Schultz, and who made a lot of money off what he did in Dallas.
Dalton Schultz and Ferguson are the exact same guy.
You don't have to be
and Hunter Henry's
a
better
super
than both.
Talented tight end. You don't have to be a super talented tight end to be a top 12 dynasty tight end, though.
I'm just saying, like Tucker Kraft is already better than, like, he was tight end 10 this year. Ferguson,
I'm with you. I love Tucker Kraft.
Yeah,
Ferguson's going into year 4. Ferguson's going into year 4. He's going to be a free agent after this season, and Luke Schoonmaker's the same guy. I don't know how to say. Is it Schoonmaker?
Who cares? They're all a bunch of guys. None of those guys matter.
We're going to care in 2 years when he's the starter in Dallas putting up Jake Ferguson.
I'm moving AJ Barner. ahead of Jake Ferguson.
Now you're just being an asshole.
It's the same guy. Why is Jake Ferguson a better tight end than AJ Barner?
Because we've seen him put up top 12 weeks. He's got 5. He had 5 this season. 5.
Jake Ferguson did?
I'll take that. He had 5 top 12 tight end weeks this year. Yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
Let's look at those
I'm looking at it. Week 3, 15.5, 4, 11, 9, 13 in week 5. I'm not saying he's a top 5 tight end.
20. He did finish as the tight end 25, so you can't replace that.
Yeah. I think we should just figure out guys we could put ahead of Jake Ferguson just to mess with Trav.
You guys are fucking with me right now.
Well,
Eric, I'm not dying on the Jake Ferguson hill by any means.
I can make a pretty strong case for Cade Otton over Jake Ferguson.
I think it's pretty close too. Sure. I got Cade Otton in that range too.
Yeah.
I mean, tight end 10 through 23 is basically splitting hairs.
Komet is the same guy as Ferguson. There's another guy, same exact guy.
Komet's been a tight end 1.
Way more athletic than Ferguson.
He's been a tight end 1.
Probably, yeah.
He's got Ben Johnson now. Komet's in the Sam Laporta role, dude.
Yeah, he's ahead.
Tight end
What's
10
the
on a points
deepest
per
I can
game
go?
basis last year, fellas, in a full season.
Oh, it was an
Just
incredible
saying.
year.
Okay,
Yeah.
who do you guys want to talk about at tight end? Because there's just a bunch of shitbag names to talk about, and I don't know.
Jatavian Sanders.
Yeah,
I
I'm not ready yet. I haven't seen enough yet, but I think he'll be there pretty soon.
Jatavian Sanders and Theo Johnson. I know that's your guy, Joe. Those are the types of players that I have well above, players like Jake Ferguson, Cole Kmet. Look, Cole Kmet and Jake Ferguson are the type of players that, like he says, you can just find a Schoonmaker or whoever the hell to throw in there and get that production. But if you're trying to access the Hawkinson, Laporta, Kittle, sort of that top level, a tight end 6 or better, because that's really what it is. When you say about top 12 finishes at the tight end position, that means almost nothing. Really, only week winning or league winning tight ends have any sort of effect. Otherwise, you might as well have I was starting Taysom Hill in a lot of spots because he might get a 0 or hardly anything, but he also can go off for like 30 and he can actually win a week. So those are the types of players. Jonnu Smith has always been that bet, right? Like he's a highly athletic tight end. David and Njoku, when they weren't performing, were always better bets at the tight end position because they had that upside that can actually change the position for you. And that's the same type of players I'm looking at with Theo Johnson and Jatavian Sanders. They might crap out like Albert Akugbunum or Greg Dulcich, but those types of players, when you have access to them, you want to just see what happens because they're either going to be Albert O or David Njoku, Jonnu Smith, and that's fine. I can manage those two things. What I don't want to do is be deluded into thinking Dalton Schultz is going to do anything for me that I can't just get off the waiver wire.
Fair.
Yeah, I'd rather hold like a tight end. I'd rather hold like 4 tight ends than, that wide receiver 7, right? Like that guy's not going to help you as much as a difference making tight end will. So I'm in on all those guys for
Noah
at least
Gray's
another
another
year.
one. Noah Gray's another big upside
Yeah,
tight end in that offense.
totally.
If something were to happen to Kelsey, retirement or otherwise, I think Noah Gray, didn't they just give him like a little bit of a contract? Like,
Yeah, I think so.
right? So he's going
He
to
was
be there.
producing with Kelsey. Like with Kelsey in
Chig,
there, he was producing.
Chig Okonkwo, another guy that's a lot like the Jonnu Smith sort of replica. He's still young. I think he's only going to be 25 next year. I think he's 24.
Yeah.
So he's still got, his prime to potentially be a player that plays. Like obviously Chig could also be Alberto, right? So Chig could be Jonnu Smith or like out of the league. And I don't know, one of those, but I'd rather have that dice roll than for sure he's Jake Ferguson, or whatever. Cause like you say, Hunter Henry, he was just there for us. Zach Ertz was there for us. You'll have guys like that you can just sort of get for nothing that are just going to give you what that looks like,
All
So
right, I have a question.
yeah,
Go for it.
Why do you guys hate Pat Freiermuth so much?
why do you love Pat Freiermuth so much? The reason I don't have him higher is because I think he needs to score double-digit touchdowns to be anything viable for you, and I have a hard time seeing him getting double-digit touchdowns in that offense.
No, honestly, I'm looking at it right now, and a lot of the arguments I just made against Ferguson, I could probably make against Freiermuth as
Suck
well.
it.
I will
Suck
say,
it.
He's
Yeah.
the alpha.
Yeah.
He's the alpha of that tier, right? Of that phylum.
Yes,
He's
he's
the
the
best
Jonnu
one.
Smith of Jake Ferguson's.
Yes, he is. He's the
Wow.
best. Yes, he's the Jonnu Smith of Jake.
That was good. That was
So
good.
good.
I made a
That makes
deal
sense.
for Patty Fries. That makes complete sense. Yeah,
Just
totally.
tweet
And I think
that. Just tweet that. Pat Freiermuth is the Jonnu Smith of Jake Ferguson's. That's a tweet. Just tweet that. That is outstanding.
I like that.
I'm done.
I like that. Guys, I think that's where we're gonna end.
Yes,
I think that's a fucking wrap with
that's it.
the Johnny
Oh.
Smith of Jake Ferguson's.
So
Always a pleasure, gentlemen. I think every time we come out of this, I just have like my cheeks hurting and a big shit-eating grin. And I feel like after the show, I'm ready to bombard you guys in the group chat to talk about all the funny things we just talked about,
that's so good.
Yeah,
I
just
love it.
thank you to you guys for enlightening my life with this weekly experience because this is always a good time.
I'm literally writing down that tweet on a piece of paper.
Yes.
Does it get more boomer than that?
No, hey.
No, that's perfect. Only if you did it on a whiteboard. That would have been.
Yeah.
Like
Stay
if you have
true to you,
a
Joe.
managerial whiteboard somewhere in that office of yours over there, you're just like, you know what? I'm gonna get this
He
on wax.
Joe, I would bet $100 right now that there is a whiteboard on the wall in that office somewhere.
There's not. There is a cork board, which I have not
Okay.
mounted yet. It's just sitting there.
Corkboard
And
is corkboard, whiteboard, big fucking corkboard might be more boomer than whiteboard.
Just
if we're
Venmo
being
us the
honest.
money. Stop it.
He doesn't Venmo. Are you kidding me? Send it to us by carrier pigeon.
Yeah, no, it's
$100.
PayPal, buddy.
Is
It's
that Canadian?
PayPal.
Is that Canadian 100 or American 100? I want American. I don't even know if that makes sense.
You're only getting it from me when the geese migrate. We have pouches that we put in, and every migration season, that's when our American deliveries go out.
All right, fair enough. I'll keep an eye out.
Okay, thank you. All right, fellas. Well, yeah, that was a really, really fun show. I cannot wait to hear what the people have to say about it. So if you are one of the people, please leave a comment. Please let us know what you had to say. Like I said on all the shows, like if you liked one of our takes or if you want to chirp one of our takes, please do. It's fun conversation.
Best take, worst
like
take of the show. I want to hear it.
Totally. We want to hear that kind of stuff. And like Jax kind of embodies this on his social media is like, have some fun, put some fun shit out there. Don't take yourself so seriously. Jax had a tweet today that compared Marvin Harrison's rookie season to Chase Claypool's. Jax knows what he's doing there. He's having a little bit of fucking fun. So don't take yourself too seriously. Lighten up and let us know what made you have fun on this episode. If I had a bad take, I want to hear it. If I had a good take, that'd be sweet too. But again, great times had with the fellas. We are found on the Undroppables YouTube channel at the Undroppables on the social media. Our social media can be found in the description. The Dynasty offseason doesn't sleep, folks. So make sure you are paying attention and you are giving your teams their just due. So until next week, that's Jax, that's Joe, I'm Trav. This has been Dynasty Underground. Peace.